When it comes to high-performance sports sedans, the BMW M3 has long been the benchmark. This is a nameplate that's been in America for the past 35 years. And over the years, it's spawned about 6 generations. This new version for 2021, BMW says is the most powerful production M3 they've ever made. It's also the most track-capable model, because if you guys remember the old F80 M3, it was a very good-looking car, but it didn't quite have the handling dynamics that we expect from an M3. So with this new 6th generation version with a face that only a mother could love, has BMW managed to make the new M3 the ultimate driving machine once again? Stay tuned to find out. So we're going to come back to this gigantic elephant in the room in just a moment, but because it's an M3, I want to first start, of course, with what's powering this thing. Now, this all-new G80 generation has a 3-liter twin turbocharged straight 6, just like the previous F80 generation. However, this motor is the same motor that we find in the X3 and X4M competition. It is known internally as the S58 motor. It makes 503 horsepower in the competition version and 479 pound-feet of torque. This is the most powerful production M3 that BMW has ever produced. It's roughly making around 50 more horsepower versus the previous M3 competition of the last generation. Now, if you guys want the base version has around 473 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. It has less power because it has less boost, around 19 PSI for the base version. This one here with the competition is pushing in around 24.5 pounds of boost, so significantly more boost. The cool thing about the M3 is you can still get this car with a manual transmission, a 6-speed on the base M3. The competition model only comes with an 8-speed auto, so if you guys want a manual, you need to buy the base version. If you want an automatic, you need to buy the competition. I like how BMW kind of simplifies that. The reason for that is because the M3's manual transmission apparently cannot handle the extra torque that this engine makes, roughly 80 more pound-feet. Now, despite the M3 being a significantly bigger car, BMW's managed to keep the weight in check, especially for modern car standards. This one here, as it sits, is around 3,890 pounds. It's around 100 to 200 pounds heavier versus the previous generation. Performance, BMW says you should get to 60 in around 3.8 seconds. It'll reach a top speed of 189 miles an hour. And fuel economy is actually not too bad. It's rated at 16 in the city, 23 on the highway. Please be sure to put premium gas in this thing. So once we're done salivating over the engine of the all-new M3, eventually we have to stop and look at this thing. And this is where this car has been the subject of controversy ever since BMW unveiled it last year. Now, we've seen the new front end on the 4 Series, and I was really shocked that they introduced that front end on the M3. This is the only 3 Series model to get, of course, the new grille. Now, if you guys thought the grille on the X7 was massive, this basically takes the cake. It's almost like a middle finger to people who were annoyed with the grille on the X7. These massive kidneys have morphed into beaver teeth. And I have to say, compared to the 4 Series that I reviewed earlier this year, I actually think the M3's grille looks better because it's got these black vertical slats in it. It's got more openings because the engine, of course, needs the cooling. And BMW basically designed this grille to accommodate one thing, and that's something we don't get here in America, and that's this: a European front license plate. Once you add the European plate, it definitely looks a lot better. It kind of breaks up, of course, the massiveness of the grille. I imagine there's going to be a lot of aftermarket add-ons that people are going to get to kind of make this grille look a little bit less annoying. I do think that it's starting to grow on me over the last couple of days. In fact, the grille itself just looks like it's growing every time I look at it. Thankfully, there are some nice design elements that go very nicely with the grille. I like the hood, of course, with these sculpted areas, these kind of twin power dome areas right here that kind of accentuate the 2 massive kidneys. The headlights also are a huge improvement over the previous generation. I like the blue accents that you get with the BMW laser light headlight technology. These are the full LED headlights, which are adaptive. You have LED daytime running lights, LED turn signals, although BMW doesn't do a sequential turn signal like you might find on an Audi competitor. And of course, a lot of these openings here are functional because you need cooling to cool this massive engine. This is a car that's designed to be used for track duty, but also be daily driven because, again, it is a M3, which is still based off of the 3 Series. Now, looking at the rest of the proportions, I really love this color. This is called Toronto Red. It actually has more orangey hues in the paint, especially with the bright sunlight hitting it. And this vehicle in general is massive now. It's grown around 4.5 inches versus the previous generation. This car is about the same length, or a little bit longer actually, versus the old E39 BMW M5 from around 20 years ago. So really it has more of a presence of an M5. In terms of the wheel design, the new M3 has very attractive set of wheels across the board. The base wheel is going to be a 19-inch. My particular tester has the optional 20-inch wheels. You have staggered setup as well. These wheels are around a $3,000 upcharge. They have a little too many spokes for me, but I love the bicolor black with the machine finish to it. It does fill out the wheel wells nicely. This car comes standard with Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires, so the best high performance tire in the business. My tester also has the optional $8,000 carbon ceramic brakes with 6-piston yellow painted or gold painted calipers at the front. These carbon ceramic rotors are around 16 inches in diameter in the front, so a little bit larger versus the previous generation, and these are the brakes you're going to want to get if you do plan to regularly track this car. Now, of course, with an M3, you also get the carbon fiber roof as standard on the competition model. This helps to lower the center of gravity. If you guys want a sunroof, you'll delete this carbon fiber roof and you'll just have a standard size sunroof. BMW does not offer the M3 with a pano roof, which is kind of a shame. I'm hoping they'll do a 4 Series Grand Coupe version of the M4, which will offer a pano roof. The rest of the profile here, you can see this vehicle is significantly wider versus an M340i. In fact, you can really see the bulging fenders, but there's one detail about the styling that I don't particularly like, and that's right here. If you look, the rear quarter panel area is flared out, but for some reason BMW didn't flare out the rear door as well. So there's this interesting little indent here, which I don't particularly like. It's a little bit of a detail that I wish BMW had addressed with the previous generation, which they did. Just a small minor niggle. The one thing I do want to point out, if you look at the rear calipers, the brake calipers, they're just a single piston floating design. The previous generation with carbon ceramic brakes actually had a bigger twin piston design. BMW tells me the reason why they had to do this is because the electronic parking brake in this vehicle, nobody manufactures a caliper piece that's a twin piece fixed that will work with the electronic parking brake. So that's something that perhaps they will address in the coming years as the technology continues to catch up. Looking at the rear, this is the best angle of the new M3. In fact, some of you may say that it kind of reminds you of a Lexus. I kind of see a little bit of the Lexus L shape in the rear taillights. These are full LED design. You can see the rear diffuser, super aggressive. This particular one here has a little bit more of the extended shadow line package, which blacks out a lot of the accents. I love the way the exhaust system looks. You have 4 massive pipes, which are blacked out. They're real. I'm talking to you, Mercedes and Audi. But you guys probably want to know, what does this thing sound like? Sound check, here's the old M4. So the old M3 actually sounded pretty good. How about the new one? So let me know in the comments below which one you guys think sounds better. Personally, I do like the noise, the new noise, especially with the burbles on the new generation M3. Now, looking at the trunk capacity, the M3 got a slightly larger trunk this year. It measures around 13 cubic feet of space. Still not wonderful, but it is relatively usable. The seats fold down in a 60-40 manner. You have some nice storage here on the side, but keep in mind if you guys want a little bit more space, you might want to consider something like the Audi RS5 Sportback. All right, so I've made it pretty clear that I'm not a fan of the grille on the front of this vehicle, even though the rest of the profile is nice. Let's hop into the interior because remember, this car starts at around $70,000, so you expect the interior to also be a nice place to spend time. And right off the bat, you can see if you guys have spent some time in the current generation 3 Series, this is going to feel pretty familiar aside from the fact that you get these unique sport seats on the M3. These are the upgraded $2,500 full merino black leather seats. They also offer a $3,800 full competition style seat, which are carbon fiber. I actually really like these. I think they're comfortable, supportive. The headrests actually adjust. They adjust in like 16 different ways. These also adjust. They're also heated and ventilated. You could not get ventilated seats on the old M3. Now you can. You have an adjustable thigh extender here. I would probably just go with a different color. This black is just really, really dark and stark in here. I would prefer a little bit more color. Now, looking at the door panel, you can see the full merino leather gives you the leather stitching on everything basically. You have the leather on the door, on this part right here. Down here it is soft touch plastic and you have some aluminum accents when I shut the door. The door has a nice solid sounding thunk, typical with a German vehicle. Now here's the key fob for the vehicle. This vehicle does offer remote start. It's all part of the iDrive 7.0. You can do it through the app or you can do it through the fob. To activate the remote start, just lock the door and then just push the lock button 3 times. And you can hear the vehicle started right up. It is, of course, all adjusted in the iDrive 7.0 screen, or you can also do it through the app. When you get in the car, or when you unlock the car basically, and get in, it tells you the remote start is active and you just have to push your foot on the brake, and then the button to fire the engine up is right here next to the shifter. Now, looking at the rest of this cabin, you can see this is basically the infotainment system you're gonna find on all the M3s. This is a 10.25 inch display here, part of their iDrive 7.0. It's a touchscreen. This is iDrive 7.0. Like I said, you also have a fully digital 12-inch display here for the instrument panel. Now this is slightly customizable, and the fact that you have 2 screens makes it much more modern than the previous generation, although some of you have definitely complained that this interior doesn't look very special considering the price. Now, let's talk about the materials because, like I said earlier, full leather stitching here on the dash. This is the aluminum Textagon or Textatron trim. You can also replace this with carbon fiber or wood for $1,000. Real aluminum trim here. There's a little screen here that shows you what the actual temperature is. You've got dual zone climate control, which is nice. Your heated and cooled seat controls are right here. You can see, I love the fact that cooled seats are available. It's a $400 upcharge if you guys want the cooled seats. The steering wheel is a manual tilt telescoping, which offers a good amount of adjustability. The wheel itself is also heated. I have 2-person memory over here on the driver's side, and the cooled seats happen to work very well. The heated steering wheel button is over here, and the steering wheel is nice and fat and meaty. It's got the signature BMW M colors for the stitching. You have your preset M1 and M2 sport drive modes over there, your cruise control, and of course your audio stuff is over here. You have paddle shifters on the wheel and the turn signal locks. One thing that BMW has changed, the previous generation, if you signaled left and right, the turn signal would return back to center. You can see they've gotten rid of that, which I actually really like because it was super annoying and confusing if you weren't used to that with a BMW. You can also change what this shows in the display here, which will show you, different information. I like having it on the audio information or just kind of your trip computer or your fuel economy. Push this little M mode here. You can see the instrument panel changes. That's the sport mode right there. With the sport gauges. I actually don't like the way this looks. It's a little bit too constricted for me. I really prefer just the way the road view looks, where you can put the GPS in the center. It doesn't look quite as classic as the traditional dials from the old generation, but BMW needs to move forward into the 21st century again. Now, looking at the screen here, you can see it does include wireless Apple CarPlay, and which it does a good job with great resolution. It's very responsive and snappy. iDrive 7.0 is actually one of the better systems in the industry now, and BMW has really simplified it by allowing us to use the touchscreen, or you can use the controller wheel right here, or it also has voice commands where you could say, "Hey BMW, hey BMW."
Hello, what can I help you with?
Temperature 68 degrees.
All right. I'm setting the temperature at 68 degrees Fahrenheit.
So yeah, the voice commands work pretty well, but it's not quite as annoying where it always comes on every time you just say BMW, like the way the Mercedes system might. So I really appreciate this. The screen is just starting to look a little bit small. I really don't like how there's all this empty real estate here. This actually does have a purpose. This serves for the gesture controls where I can do the volume up and down, I can mute it, I can skip a track as well. So the gesture controls, BMW introduced that a couple of years ago. It's of course still included with this vehicle. When I put the car into reverse, you can see backup camera and parking sensors, but my tester's missing the parking tech package for another $800 that gives you a 360 camera and automatic parallel and perpendicular parking. So instead you just have the traditional camera, which has good resolution and graphics. Here's the nav display. You can see the map is okay. It's nothing really super special. It's very snappy and responsive, but I've seen some better systems in Mercedes and of course in Audi vehicles, which is nice, or which is a little annoying. Scrolling over here to the car display, this is where you can kind of adjust a lot of different things. This car has what's called a drift analyzer here, which I wish I could show you that, but I don't sadly have access to a track while I have this car. But I do know when we get into the driving scene how easy it is to actually drift around this car and not get yourself into trouble. It's just a really well-balanced car that very much impresses me. The M mode basically allows you to configure things. You have the head-up display, which you can also add or customize and add a tachometer in there if you'd like. The car mode is where you can find all your different settings. You can adjust your ambient lighting color, your driver assistance stuff. This is all pretty standard stuff in here. The tech in it works well. It just doesn't look very impressive. Now, my tester also has the Harman Kardon stereo in this car. It sounds okay. Most of the times you're gonna be listening to the engine. They don't offer anything upgraded like the Bowers and Wilkins systems you'll find in like the M5 or the M8, for example. Down here you can see there's a wireless phone charger. You have your USB port, cup holders, of course. You can close this if you wanna hide your stuff. This controls the 8-speed automatic. It very much looks like a shifter that they used on the dual clutch versions. You kind of kick it over that way and then push up for reverse, and then kick it over to the right here for drive, push P for park. There's also different aggression modes that you can do with the transmission, where you can put into drive here and you can select between 3 different levels of aggression, or just push one of the M1, M2 buttons. There's now an electronic parking brake. I like the piano black trim here. This all makes it for a very clean look. You have these dedicated short buttons here, of course, for the iDrive. Open this up, you can see this is a pretty decent storage. You have a USB-C, just a charging outlet there. This lid is nice and padded, of course, which is good. My tester doesn't have the sunroof. They don't offer a pano roof, just a standard sunroof for another, like, I think $700, which would get rid of the carbon fiber roof. And then, of course, over here you can see the glove box. It's pretty deep, actually. It's damped and it's lined with felt. So overall, the interior of the M3 definitely would look a lot better in a brighter, or just a color that pops more versus this black. It is roomy, it is spacious, it is easy to see out of, but if you're looking for a little bit more, you know, glitz and glam in your interior, the Mercedes is probably the better option, or even perhaps the Audi. So if you're trying to sell the new M3 to your spouse, this is where the sedan portion of this vehicle is going to come really in handy, because BMW says you get around 36 inches of legroom back here. It's practically what you used to get in an M5 from 20 years ago. This is actually a pretty nice place to spend time. Keep in mind, I'm only 5'7". I have plenty of headroom, plenty of legroom. There is a massive hump here because, remember, this is a rear-wheel drive vehicle, but you do get some nice features such as these rear seat air vents. You get rear seat climate control. You have 2 USB-C charging ports, but there are no heated rear seats back here. There is a nice armrest here, although it's not necessarily an armrest because this is kind of just an area of the seat that folds down. It's not padded here. It doesn't offer any storage or cup holders, but overall the back seat is definitely usable. Go for this model instead of the M4 if you guys actually plan to put adults back here. All right, so here we are, an all-new version of the BMW M3. This is a huge deal in the enthusiast world. This is the super sedan in which all other super sedans are measured against, and BMW has been doing the M3 for quite some time. So a new version is, wow, I'm so excited to be able to finally drive this. Now, I never actually showed you guys a full review of the previous generation F80. I actually just drove one prior to getting into this car. It was an M4 2017 competition with the manual transmission. Fantastic car. Great that you can still get the new one with a stick. However, this is the competition model. It's now got a torque converter 8-speed automatic. BMW says that they've fixed the main issue of the old one, which is its inability to put the power down, especially now that we have over 500 horsepower. There is still an all-wheel drive version coming, but they've tested this car, or BMW says this car should get to 60 in around 3.8 seconds. So let's see if that is actually the case. And you know what? There's a little bit of jiggle in the back tires, but I just got a 0 to 60 in 3.82 seconds, and that's with a slightly slow reaction time. Wow, that is impressive. 3.82 seconds, and this thing just puts the power down like an all-wheel drive car almost. I mean, it gets a little bit slidey, like not slidey even, just it jiggles the rear end, but it does it in a way that's kind of hilarious, actually. And 3.8, you know, the Germans tend to be pretty conservative with their 0 to 60 numbers, so I'm sure that we could do better than that. But right off the bat, I'm noticing just how much of a driver's car this feels. The steering is so sharp, direct, the front end has so much grip. Like, and this is just me first getting behind the wheel. This is insane. And right there, I just got 3.6 seconds. 3.6 seconds in this car. That's very impressive. I mean, the all-wheel drive version of this thing should easily get into the low 3s. BMW really, really did an amazing job with this chassis, but I just need to drive it a little bit more on some curvy roads. So what about if you just floor it from a stop here? Let's just go ahead and try that. I have it in MDM1, their sport mode. The stability control is in like a sport setting. So there's a lot more lag if you don't use the launch control, but it's probably going to do a 0-60 around the 4-second mark, but 3.6 that you can get with the launch control is impressive. And I'm just so thrilled that this car actually puts the power down, yet it also feels like a race car. In sport mode like this, in Sport Plus with everything, this car just feels incredibly sticky. It has little to no body lean. The front end has plenty of grip. And the engine is so relentless. It's the S58, of course, so we've got the new twin turbocharged straight six. 503 horsepower, but this thing feels underrated. It feels more like 550 horsepower. And the one thing that's interesting about this new M3 is the fact that BMW has replaced the dual clutch with an 8-speed auto. Now, purists are probably sad about that. However, you probably wouldn't even notice that this is a torque converter automatic. The ZF 8-speed is so good in how fast it shifts, how responsive, yet how smooth it can be when you want it to be smooth. And yes, it may not downshift rev match as fast as the dual clutch used to, but there's a reason why BMW replaced it with the 8-speed auto, and that's because they wanted to add all-wheel drive to this car, which the dual clutch doesn't match up with. It's just, how does this thing just wiggle its tail so much, yet it's so controllable? And that's exactly the reason why BMW added a drift analyzer on this car, because it is so driftable. Listen to this engine too. It just, Now, BMW is piping in some fake engine noise through the speakers. Actually, it's all fake engine noise. The exhaust of this car sounds pretty good from the outside. You know, even though this is fake noise, I'm okay with that because it sounds so good. It's just, it fills the cabin with a visceral snarl of a straight six that you expect from BMW. And remember, oh my God. Oh yes, it's so good. Woo! This is the ultimate track car. This car feels just as composed and as fun as the last Porsche Cayman that I used to own. The front end has so much grip, it's so neutral. The steering is so direct and so sharp and so accurate. The car almost feels like it was built around these tires. These Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires are just absolutely perfect for the chassis. And it just revs so hard and so fast. I mean, yes, there is a little bit of lag initially, which you can mitigate by using the launch control. But just every time you go near the throttle, this thing just pulls and pulls for days. Top speed is 189, basically 190 miles an hour. Oh my God. And my tester with the carbon ceramic brakes, it stops as good as it goes. Wow, I'm impressed. I am blown away. This feels like a return to the ultimate driving machine from BMW, which was sorely lacking in a lot of their products over the last 10 years. I mean, I drove and filmed for you guys the X3M competition, which has this same engine. It drove nice, but this is perfection. And the beauty about this car is, even though the suspension is tuned to go to the track, it rides really well. Like with these 20-inch wheels, the adaptive dampers, how did BMW manage to tune the ride quality so good? I don't know. It just feels like they're finally back. Like they are the benchmark. They have been for years. This car makes you want to do naughty things. Ooh, it sounds so good. And you know what? I really want to drive it with the manual transmission, but this 8-speed takes every bit advantage of this engine. Such a flat, meaty power band that's just torque for days. Like, seriously, I'm flabbergasted. This is such a good car. I mean, because I've driven the C63S like it, but it doesn't put the power down quite as well. It feels like a big, heavy muscle car sometimes, a German muscle car. I haven't driven the new Audi RS5, but I've driven that motor in the Macan GTS. Great powertrain, but the Audi, of course, is going to feel a little bit more understeer prone. It's going to feel a little nose heavy. There's something about this car that just feels so sublime. It reminds me why I fell in love with BMWs in the first place 20 years ago when I first started driving, you know, back in high school. And I'm blown away. I am blown away with how good this car is. It is such a good car to drive. Even just putting your foot down when you're going turning, the back likes to step out a tad, but it doesn't scare you. It does it in a way that's so controllable. But anyways, let's get out of the M dynamic mode, just drive it normally. Because this is still a 3 Series, and when you're driving it normally, you basically have to remind yourself that this is also a luxury car, and it drives really well. In fact, on the highway, I got around 28 miles to the gallon in this thing, which is unbelievable. In the city, it was doing around 16. My Tesla is missing the driver assistance tech stuff, which would make it a lot, you know, easier or nicer to drive on the highway. But you can daily drive this. The seats hold you in place. You can see out of it well. It gets good gas mileage when you guys are just driving it like a responsible person, which is hard to do. But yeah, I am just shocked. I am so shocked at how impressive this new 3 Series is, this new M3 is. It is very much the benchmark. BMW has found their mojo, and I'm just happy they have. Now if you can just get over the front end, which you don't have to look at it when you're sitting here, because this is the best seat in the house, is right here behind the wheel. So as repulsive as the new front end is on the new M3, you guys saw my solution from earlier. If you happen to live in a state that doesn't require a front license plate, get yourself one and screw it into the bumper. That was terrible. Get yourself one, because that's what BMW designed the front end to basically incorporate. Also, if you guys like dark colors, the dark colors will hide the massive kidney grills, but really it's all about how this car drives, because yes, the front end I still think is hideous, but the rest of the car is absolutely sublime. You guys saw it handles and drives like an all-wheel drive car, yet will still do the tail-out shenanigans that you expect from a rear-wheel drive BMW M3. It has steering that surprisingly makes me fall in love with BMWs all over again, just like I did 20 years ago when I was in high school. It looks fantastic from this angle, from that angle at the back, and it is a ridiculously practical car. You guys saw with the back seat, which is nice and big. It's got most of the tech features that you could want, and for you purists out there who want a manual transmission, this is the one that you can get with a stick. And yes, you may have to give up 30 horsepower. The competition model is very, very near perfect for me. As much as I love the 8-speed auto, if I was going to buy this car, I would spec it in Isle of Man green with a stick with the orange interior. That's the one that I would go for, because the competition version, as this one is priced out, is a little over $92,000. 90 grand is too much for a BMW M3. This car starts at $69,900 for the base version with a stick shift. The competition's around $3,000 more. The one that I personally built that basically had the Isle of Man green, the upgraded merino leather in orange, the executive package was around $77,000. That to me is the near perfect blend, because even though this is more expensive than something like a Tesla Model 3 Performance or the upcoming versions of the BMW i4, which is going to be electric, although we don't have pricing on just that yet. I'm anticipating this is going to be more expensive. This has a lot to like about it, because it is very much a track car that you can daily drive easily. It's comfortable out on the road, yet you put it into its M dynamic modes and it feels like a race car. And this car very much makes me feel like BMW has found the plot. They've realized that they are the ultimate driving machine, and this new M3, despite its front end, is for me the best driving super sports sedan that you can buy today in 2021. But with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the 2021 BMW M3 competition. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.